Can you beat it? If you had to pick one seed, it's going to be the best thing for attractiveness throughout the entire season, overall huntability, tolerance to browse pressure.
You know that I've experimented with every seed blend out there, probably every seed, and I've just gone with what I've seen work. You know, when they're out there feeding in the food plots, I'm glassing them, trying to see exactly what they're eating.
You gotta focus on what type of plot you're planning, where your location is, where it's at on your farm, because this is an actual blend that has a lot of varying applications throughout the season.
Welcome back to another week of Midwest Whitetail, guys. On this week's show, we're gonna join myself, Owen, and Zach as we cover everything fall food plot. We're gonna go through each one of our favorite blends from Monster Buck, when to plant them, how to plant them, where to plant them, everything you need to know to get them in the ground and increase your success during the hunting season. You know, we've had a ton of success over the last few years with the Monster Buck blends. They have great customer service as well. They've got the food plot guide on their website that you can pull information from to learn more about what to do in your own specific area. You call them, they're gonna get one of the guys on the phone, they're gonna help walk you through things. They've got a seed guarantee, great fresh seed that they guarantee to germinate. If you guys wanna order seed from the Monster Buck website, we have a code MWW that will provide 20% off all the blends. And as always, if you guys have differing opinions or anything you want to suggest, or you've had success with these blends, drop us a comment, tag us on Instagram, let us know what's going on out there in your world. Super interested to hear about it. Let's jump over to the show. We're gonna get started with answering the question, what each of our favorite blends are and why. I've used a lot of food plot blends over the years, but my absolute favorite is the Monster Buck Rut Greens Plus Cold Climate. You know, I've been using their seed blends now for a few years, and that blend just has it all for, if you had to pick one seed to put in a food plot, it's gonna be the best thing for attractiveness throughout the entire season, overall huntability, tolerance to browse pressure, you know, all of those things. I've had some of the best hunts of my life over that food plot blend. You know, last year I caught up with Vinny, had him in the plot mid-October, came to 3 yards. Can you beat it? And then mid-November, my daughter Bella took her first buck with a bow, one of the coolest memories of my life and one of my favorite memories of my entire hunting career in this very plot that we're standing in now. Hard to beat moments like that, and that food plot blend is one of the things that can help provide those moments. So the Rut Greens Plus Cold Climate, it's a brassica blend. It's got a few turnips in it. It's got kale, and it's got rape. It also has a cold tolerant clover that comes up in the spring, provides nitrogen back for that next year's plot, gives you some cover crop, and also is great for like nesting birds and whatnot. It's got varying rates of maturity within the different plants, and so it's attractive through the entire season. You got different plants that have high palatability in different months. And so it's great in September, October, November, all the way through to the end of late season. I like to do a few things that I customize it with. I add radishes, usually just right in front of my stand in bow range. So I'll take a little 40-yard circle around that tree and I'll just broadcast radishes on top. They've replaced radishes in their blend with a couple turnips that have that early maturation and are more cold tolerant than radishes. But I've always had just great luck with radishes those first 2 weeks of October, and I like putting that just right in front of the stand. I also usually come back and top it with a little extra clover, or I'll just wait to frost seed it in February. Another blend I use a lot of out here on the farm is the Overcast blend by Monster Buck. And it's pretty similar when you read the ingredients to the rut greens. They dropped the Bayou kale and they added in another clover, and there's a slightly different rate of seed in there. But you've got the same nice mixture of fast-growing turnips that will tolerate browse pressure. And it's designed to broadcast into standing grain. So whether that's an agricultural field or my bean plots out here, you just take that in there and broadcast it. And I do it right in front of my redneck blinds. So if I've got an 8-acre bean plot on the merino field, I'll go broadcast in front of that. And I'll do that on all the bean plots, just to give you another food source, particularly late season. When they come into the field, they want to come nibble on some of the turnip bulbs. It'll bring them closer to the blind and get them in bow range. But if you have a permission farm, or you have a farm of your own that's mostly row crop, you know, there's usually some deer damage on the edges, and Rye's had great success, and other team members over the years, just going with that later in the summer and broadcasting it right into those areas that can get some sunlight, and it'll turn up a great food plot for you.
Oh yeah, there it is right there. I'm trying to psych myself up. Just, you know, I've said before, these big old bucks, they put on their fur one leg at a time like all the 6-year-old bucks, so he's not invincible. He's out way early. Yeah! Dude, we got him, buddy. Dude, your dad's up there smiling so bad right now.
All right, guys, we're talking fall food plots here. If you want to talk about year-round success and having the deer there, Monster Buck has provided that for me. You look back to early October when we killed Loch Ness, you know, deer were using that like crazy. Several encounters down Death Row, of course, with having greens in there. They come through, hit the greens, go onto the corn or the beans, whatever's in there. So you know that I've experimented with every seed blend out there, probably every seed, and I've just gone with what I've seen work. You know, when they're out there feeding in the food plots, I'm glassing them, trying to see exactly what they're eating. I want to know what they're hitting. So I have come up with my own seed blend. It's got bark ant turnip in it, purple top turnip. It's got radish in it. It's got a winter pea that's very cold hardy, better than the Austrian winter pea. And then it's got 3 types of annual clovers in it. So, you know, those will establish quickly and be really hard to beat that fall mix. Matter of fact, if you want to use that, it's available through me. Like I said, Monster Buck is mixing that for me, but it's available through my website, Whitetail Insanity. So if you want any of that, let me know and we'll get some out to you, but it's a killer mix. I would encourage you guys to try Monster Buck. They've got great customer service over there. Anytime I call or email, I deal with Cody over there a lot, and they've always been great to work with, so give it a try. I think you guys will enjoy it.
So I'm gonna take a little bit different approach to this one, because first and foremost, I've talked about this numerous times. Clover is near and dear to my heart. I really love Monster Buck's multi-year blend, especially with that chicory added into it. You know, from a year-round basis, it just seems like clover, chicory, you know, you're providing the most protein for wildlife. So it's hard for me to not name that blend. I know we're talking about fall food plot blends, but if I had to pin it down to one, I really love the No Huddle from Monster Buck, and really just because I love the cereal grain application. And during early season, if you can hit those cereal grains right and time that right, those are gonna be one of the #1 food sources that deer are gonna be hitting in that early season, because they're gonna have that early growth. It's gonna be lush, green, but the downside of that is that it is gonna go dormant. So you gotta be able to play that into your actual food plot. If there's spots that you wanna key in on, you know, certain sections of your farm that you wanna hunt early season, and then you wanna put your rut greens in your actual row crop acres in different locations, you know, that's something that you can really play that food plot architecture component to it, where you can select that no huddle and have that really good for the early season side of it, where it has, you know, the Monster Buck oats, it has the winter wheat, has the rye in it, where those are gonna be really great food sources early, where you can really key in on those bucks, you know, during that first part of October. And then you still get the component of having purple top turnips. It has the actual clover still mixed into those, where you can set that up for the following years. And it's hard for me to not think about No Huddle and think about that buck I called Sneezy last year, because that was such a unique, you know, application of this food plot blend, because, you know, really that was a failed bean plot is what it was. You know, we didn't have success with it. We got super rainy, access was tough. So I came in there with No Huddle, incorporated that in, and really just made a little 1/4 acre, you know, kill plot right around that stand location with a little trail that led right to it. It's really awesome to see how that hard work that we're putting in right now can really pay off again in November.
dude. But dude, go. The next thing we're going to cover is where. How do we go about selecting our food plot sites and how the location affects overall success?
Location, 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 right? So it's the same with real estate. That's something that we always talk about. But you know, really, I'm gonna apply this from an application of, you know, thinking about it from a permission standpoint, because, you know, as somebody, as a landowner, you know, I have the ability to kind of carve out plots where I want to put them on my property and where I want to see those, you know, moving forward. But really, it comes down to your scouting, looking at your maps. And I think about that from like open areas. You know, what are those low-hanging fruit areas? Because specifically, if you're hunting on permission, you know, a lot of times if you go to landowners and there's an underutilized area, maybe it's something at the corner of CRP, and specifically in ag country, you know, if it's an area where the farmer with 12-row equipment continues to get larger and larger, maybe they don't want to go down a little cove, and maybe they don't want to plant that end of that tip of that finger. You know, those are locations that are going to be the low-hanging fruit spots where oftentimes, even if you're hunting on permission, they're going to allow you to go in there and they're going to plant food plots in those locations.
When we talk about where to put these plots, and we're standing in the south plot on the river farm, and it's one of my favorite spots on the whole river farm. I always, of course, think about ingress and egress, okay, our access to the stand, making sure you can get in and out and hunt something over and over without busting the deer. The most beautiful thing about this plot is its proximity to bedding. I mean, we've got the big peninsula right here, we've got really thick bedding all the way around. And this, I mean, deer will be out here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and they'll be in and out of it all day long, all afternoon. It even works in the mornings. This plot's about half an acre and I usually run 2 cameras on it. Most of the deer enter on this west side that's closest to the bedding, and so I've always had a camera in that corner. And then we have a red oak that we left standing when we first put this plot in that acts as a scrape tree, and it's in bow range of the stand. And so I keep a camera on that scrape. And the card pull from last year really illustrates how well this plot does throughout the entire season. I mean, right after we plant it, it pops up, it's beautiful and green through September. There's just tons of activity on here. We got velvet bucks. We made an early season hunt here and had our first encounter with moss. And then of course, throughout October and November, it's great. There's a ton of does here because of the proximity to bedding again. And so there's a lot of buck activity here. And while we talk about, as you move into November, you know, does go underground and you may not see them out in the open as much, particularly in the bigger food plots. They're getting harassed, so they stay close to cover. This plot actually avoids some of that. I mean, you definitely see a pickup in buck activity on the scrape and cruising through here. And then of course, through late season, it's super attractive. As I mentioned, you've got the green to grain transfer, you've got the bulbs here, the proximity to the bedding. That theme plays through in a lot of spots, but this spot really has an exclamation point on it.
So if we're talking where, there's a lot of different thoughts you can put into this, and I start out the same with all food plots, and that's access. So want to be able to access it if I plan on hunting it. For me, I want some kind of a green to green transfer. I know you guys have heard that before, but when your beans defoliate, go yellow and defoliate, they're going to move on to something else, and you really want something green out there, at least I do. Now I've got a lot of clover and alfalfa, just like where we're standing. That's kind of my fail-safe if you don't get a rain, if you have a drought and you can't get your fall plots up out of the ground. This is what I rely on to fall back on, so you always have something green. So I'm not going to be without, because, you know, I talk about it all the time. I don't want a reason for the deer to leave. So primarily that's why. I want something green for them to transition to coming out of the beans. You know, if you've got corn, that's great too, but they're only going to eat so much of that before they want some roughage with it. You also want to set these up, at least I do, to try and protect your deer herd if you can. You know, kind of put them toward the middle, still be able to access them, get in and out. I like it close to cover so they get there early. You know, it's not after dark unless it's just a, you know, a transition area where they're moving out to destination food. You can also have destination too if you want, but that's primarily the where. You know, I'm going to think about all that kind of stuff just like with any plot.
The next one we're going to cover is when to plant these food plots. You know, here in Iowa and mostly in the Midwest with the rut greens plus cold climate mixture, we're looking at the end of July, early August to have that peak attractiveness during the season. But when the plant varies according to which blend you're planting, so we'll hear from the different guys regarding that. kind of like with overcast, you know, you want to try to wait till the beans start to defoliate a little bit, or we plant those a lot of times a little bit farther into August so that you get that seed to the ground and it's got sunlight and it can germinate.
So I'm going to give a really broad range when I talk about no huddle, and because there's a lot of strategy that goes into that. So essentially we get to the point of end of July all the way up until the end of September, you can plant no huddle. And I've had success all the way through that. You know, if I'm doing my early plantings in July, you're gonna have better success with your turnips, you know, but you also gotta be careful with those cereal grains where you don't wanna have a substantial amount of rain. They start to head out and then, you know, it becomes less palatable for the wildlife when it comes out there. But all the way up into the end of September, those cereal grains will have success really until you get into those 40-degree temperatures where they'll continue to grow. But the thing is once you get later and later in that planting application, you're not gonna have those bulbs get to a larger size. So really you're just going off greens at that point. You gotta focus on what type of plot you're planting, where your location is, where it's at on your farm, because this is an actual blend that has a lot of varying applications throughout the season.
The when, that's kind of a moving target. If you would ask me that last year, I'd have said, well, I'd go probably middle of July to late July through early August to be my optimum window to plant. This year, I'm gonna say that's a little bit later based on what I found out last year. I just didn't see with the turnips and the radishes just great big volleyball size. I didn't see the usage on it like I did when they were smaller. So I'm gonna try and move that planting date back, say about August 1st to the 15th, right in that window, you know, kind of watch for rain. And you know, that's always what you're up against. Are you gonna catch the rain that time of year? You know, you never really know. We've had some drought years. This year definitely isn't one of them, but you know, so as far as when, I'm gonna move that back, hope those bulbs are a little smaller, and I think they're just more attraction when they're like that.
Lastly, we're gonna cover how, and that's just the step-by-step process of how do you do the food plots. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, from the poor man plot technique with basically no equipment, all the way up to big equipment, spraying and drilling.
So when I talk about no huddle down at the homestead this year, you know, that is in standing natives. It's been CRP for a number of years now. So my plan for that specific application is that I'm gonna till these plots early with the idea that I'm gonna let it sit dormant for a little while so those weeds can come back up, because there's just so much weed bank that's just waiting for that opportunity to come to sunlight. And so the idea is that I'm gonna allow them to come up, I'm gonna spray those off, and then I'm actually just gonna broadcast seed directly into those. If I can Cultipack or follow with a roller, that's gonna have the great seed to soil contact. And I really think that that's gonna set me up for success down at the homestead. But one of the things that you can also do with this blend is that we burn off all the thatch and we just broadcast directly into it. You know, you can have really great seed to soil contact, and that comes with minimal effort. You know, you can go in there with a backpack sprayer and use glyphosate to spray that off, non-selective herbicide, where essentially you're just killing everything. Wait for it to die down, burn off that thatch. And if you're not comfortable with the fire application, that's not necessarily a step you have to take, but it will definitely help get that seed down to the soil, you know, because anytime you have that thatch, you have potential that the seed's gonna get hung up into it. Lots of different applications for the seed, and just really, it just comes down to knowing what location you're gonna have, scouting those locations and making sure that you're ready come time, because so much of food plot success just comes down to the weather. It's just catching the rain at the right time, because 1 or 2 rains on these food plot blends is gonna set you up for success for the season.
All right, I'm gonna take you guys through how I would plant these. We're up here at Wyatt's tree, and you guys have seen me plant up here before. But if I have clover or alfalfa that's a little sparse, I'm gonna drill right into that, and you're gonna have a great plot just from that alone. Now, if you got a good stand like what I have here, all that stuff's gonna compete, and your fall mix isn't gonna do as well because you've got such a good blanket of clover and alfalfa. So that's one side of it. Another one that I've done about the last probably 4 years that I love is drilling into soybeans. You check this out, you got some bare spots in here and stuff. Now I need to get this sprayed one more time, get everything killed here, but you can kind of look through here and see the bare spots. Drill right into this bean plot and you have a dual food source, your fall green mix plus your standing soybeans. Now you're gonna kill some of it driving through it, but not enough to where you don't have soybeans. So you have both of those food sources, and I think that's the future of food plots right there. I think that's the best you can get.
So for those of you who have never planted a food plot before, or if you're relatively new to it and having some trouble, we'll kind of go through some of the steps on how to create a food plot. And My overall statement would be don't be afraid to try it. It's a lot easier than you think, especially with a seed blend like this. And Monster Buck, they have a great food plot guide on their website that you can check out, and just give the guys a call. You know, they have great customer service. They have guys that are super knowledgeable about all of this stuff, seeds, soil, what to spray, how to fertilize, and they're the ones you're talking to when you call them. So don't be afraid to give them a call. They'll hook you up with the right seed and make sure you're doing what's best for what you have on your farm, what your soil's like, and your location in the country. My plots on the river farm have been planted for a number of years, and I still have a heavy reed canary grass seed bed. Now I put that clover in there to try to return nitrogen and act as a cover crop to reduce weeds. We actually mow it throughout the summer like we do our clover plots, kind of keep it in check. But when it comes time to plant, I still do a chemical burn down with Roundup and 2,4-D. And of course, if you got a new site, you're gonna need to nuke it pretty good to get all that vegetation out of there. Now from that point, there's a lot of different ways to do it. When I first started out, I had an ATV sprayer and I had a rototiller on the back of my tractor, and I wanted a clean seed bed, and I'd till everything up, and it was just beautiful powdery dirt. One of the negatives of that is going to be you're stirring up the seed bed, so you just killed off everything that was on the surface. Now you're bringing some of those weed seeds back to the surface. The other thing is your soil moisture. You know, we're planting this late summer, into July, early August, and a lot of times there might be a drought for a few weeks, and you want that soil moisture to be maintained as best you can. Nowadays, I'm using a no-till drill from Great Plains, and so I come and spray it and I drill it. I've got a lot of plots. That helps me be really efficient. It helps retain soil moisture. I'm not stirring up the seed bed. I've also had luck doing the poor man plot style, where you're sneaking into an area with a backpack sprayer you can't get any equipment to, maybe a little opening in the woods. You spray it all off and get a good burn down, and you just come in and broadcast. The main thing you're thinking about here is seed to soil contact. And so there's some advantages to leaving thatch standing and letting those seeds work their way down and protect those young plants as they get bigger. If it's really bad thatch, sometimes I'll burn it off with actual fire, get a leaf blower in there. Everything's green around, so a lot of times in the summer you can burn off little patches here and there. I've had luck doing it all these different ways, and I think you just gotta try it. And most brassica mixtures, you know, they recommend fertilizing with 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre. That clover stand from the winter, of course, helps return some of that nitrogen, but I buy the stabilized urea, which is a 4600. So for every 100 pounds, there's 46 pounds of nitrogen. If you're buying 50-pound bags, there's 23 pounds of nitrogen per bag. And you could do the food grade urea, which is not stabilized. You need to get that on right before a rain, or you need to till that in, put it on before you do your tillage. The stabilized costs a little bit more, but you're less likely to lose it to the environment. Lots of ways to do it. Don't be afraid to try it. It's going to be one of the best pots you can put in to enhance your hunting.